Today, I want to take you back to a time when NVIDIA wasn't just making graphics cards, but actually some pretty interesting devices. Well, I mean, they still do that now. One of them is the NVIDIA Shield TV, which is honestly the best Android TV box in my opinion. But back in the day, they had way more variety in their device lineup, and the gadgets themselves were just a bit more interesting, you know? So today we're going to talk about the most interesting one of them all, and probably the most unusual one too, the NVIDIA Shield Portable. The first handheld console focused on streaming, which I remembered after my last video about Stadia's failure. If you haven't seen that one, I definitely recommend checking it out. So the Shield Portable is already 10 years old, ancient hardware you'd think, but man, it made quite a buzz back then. And by the way, we're also going to touch on how it holds up today. It's basically a gaming gadget through and through for people who love nostalgia, know what Android is, and appreciate the classics. That's pretty much how you could describe it in one sentence. But to start talking about it, we need to dive into the context, which is NVIDIA's own development, the Tegra 4 chip. Basically, it all started with Tegra, and if you've heard this name somewhere before, then yeah, you're right. The most popular handheld console in the world right now, the Switch, has an NVIDIA chip installed from this very Tegra line, the Tegra X1. Well, the very first in the Tegra lineup was the APX 2500, released in 2008. It was installed in the company's own reference smartphone, some GPS navigators and media players, but never in like any actual mainstream smartphone. But that's what NVIDIA was aiming for, and in 2009, the first really popular Tegra device saw the light. It was the Microsoft Zune HD player, stylish Windows mobile device. Then there was the Samsung M1, a Microsoft smartphone with the weird name Keen on Windows CE, by the way. But competing with Qualcomm and Broadcom was really tough, so the Green team slowly ramped up the power with updates to their system-on-chip revisions. So model number 2 got the ability to run Android with an unlocked bootloader, and Ubuntu, by the way, runs there pretty successfully. 2 cores of the 9th Cortex and a low power consumption GeForce graphics processor helped quite nicely. The device list grew. Here you had Motorola, LG, and Samsung. The 3rd revision came with 4 cores already. Well, actually 5. The 5th was like a low power one for reduced energy consumption when the device was barely being used. That's when this 5th core would kick in. Additional shader blocks appeared in the video core, frequency also increased. This Tegra, by the way, powered the original Surface in 2012, the Nexus 7 tablet, and Tesla's main computer started using exactly this solution to make the multimedia system work beautifully, smoothly, and just how we all love it. And here comes the 4th Tegra. 2013, same 5 cores and basically the same working scheme. Only instead of a 9 Cortex cores, there were already a 15 ones on board. The video chip got dressed up again, frequencies increased, and as a result, the 3rd Tegra was left high and dry. The difference was colossal. The 2nd Surface immediately took it on board, as did many other tablets, like the HP Slatebook, Xiaomi Mi 3, and even NVIDIA's own hardware, the Tegra Note 7. Along with this console we're going to focus on in detail today, the NVIDIA Shield Portable. Unusual design, right? I mean, all kinds of handhelds have come out, including Android ones, but mostly they were much later and more traditional forms. You know, rectangle with joysticks on the sides. Here, NVIDIA decided to literally make a controller, stick hardware inside it, and cover the whole thing with a screen. Looks incredibly unusual, even after the huge Steam Deck. And it definitely catches attention, by the way. In the closed state, we only see the lid, the only part that wears out quickly, as you can notice, but NVIDIA anticipated this and sold replacement lids separately. Though where to get them now, no idea. On the bottom, we have grips, right and left triggers, and the Shield inscription. Minimalistic. We open it, and basically we're greeted by an Xbox controller. Only the sticks are next to each other, like on a DualShock. By the way, full-sized, deep, recessed, just right. Very comfortable. D-pad and a set of signature green buttons. The main one in the center opens the NVIDIA hub and turns on the console. Separate volume button that, when pressed, brings up plus and minus buttons on screen. Weird decision, right? They could have placed 2 small buttons somewhere on the side, also a play button for the built-in utility game, and standard Android device keys, back and home. These perforated speaker panels are actually very loud, and on the back we have an actual air outlet. This is one of the first portable active cooling systems. The triggers and shoulders are actually quite comfortable, especially for those who use Xbox controllers. Decent travel, and the ports are pretty interesting, by the way. We have mini HDMI through which the Shield can connect to a TV micro SD card reader, cause games gotta be stored somewhere, right? Micro USB port for charging, and a 3.5 jack so you don't wake up the neighbors while you're gaming. The screen. Yeah, it's pretty small, especially by today's standards, and the form factor itself reminds me of enthusiast solutions where people attach their smartphones to controllers. Basically, it's the same principle, though here, the bezels are huge and the display itself is small. But at least it has 720p resolution, like the first Switch or Steam Deck, so no DPI problems. 294 dots per inch. Everything's great. IPS matrix, good one by the way. Brightness is sufficient. Viewing angles are decent. Only those bezels are really big, though normal for those years. Everything else is super. You pick it up and the sensations are kind of weird. Obviously, NVIDIA tried to make the Shield feel as close as possible to a full-size controller. But if you hold it like your traditional Xbox or PlayStation controller, you'll have to open the screen at quite an angle, almost vertically. Well, unless it's lying on a table and you're watching some series, an intermediate position will be enough. Otherwise, you feel like all the controls are recessed deep inside, so you're holding the outside, but your fingers go somewhere deep forward. At first, it'll definitely be unusual and you'll need to get used to it, but that's not scary. What's scary is that this thing runs Android 5. Can you believe it? Many major versions behind. Of course, this affects the current user experience, but let's go step by step. We have NVIDIA's own launcher here, which doesn't differ much from stock Android, but has small settings for gamers. Like mapping touch controls to buttons if the game doesn't support controllers at all, the aforementioned NVIDIA hub, which opens by pressing the NVIDIA logo button. We open the top shade and see a shortcut for connecting an additional controller, and in settings we see a separate item for configuring the built-in controller. Here you can set volume control to bumpers, for example, though then it's unclear how to play. You can separately set the brightness of the NVIDIA button backlight in the center, and this is where automatic downloading of layouts for touch-controlled games is enabled. Nothing special in HDMI settings, can't enable battery percentage either, which is annoying. Among non-standard shortcuts on the home screen, you can see screen mirroring mode switching when HDMI is connected, additional gamepad activation, and NVIDIA Hub. I gotta say, even though Android 5 is still supported by most apps and the device originally shipped with Android 4, everything should be okay here, but personally, I ran into problems. Play Store didn't work out of the box for me. It said, can't connect to servers, can't do anything at all. Had to install updated Google services and a new version of the store, only then everything worked, and even then with some hiccups. Good thing it connects to a computer right away and APK files upload without problems. The NVIDIA app also updated and worked. Out of the box, it asked to update and wouldn't let me use it, but Play Store was giving me the finger. Downloaded an APK, it worked. But that's just the beginning, because even though everything worked, the overall performance of the entire shell turned out to be very, very low. While installing APK Pure and apps through it, then Play Store, pure pain. You do an action, wait for it to unfreeze, and so on in circles. Thankfully, this only affects initial setup. Later, using the device becomes pleasant if you don't go beyond games and emulators. But be ready that if you stray slightly from the standard scenario, press something wrong, it just starts going crazy. This happens quite often. So what actually works here? Well, standard Android games that support Android 5. From the interesting stuff, honestly, not much interesting worked here. World of Tanks. I tried installing 7 different versions of San Andreas, and only succeeded on the 8th, NFS No Limits. Is that even relevant? I don't think so. Basically, this isn't a device where you go to the store and download a bunch of stuff. You have to really search for things, and not in Play Store, just to play some tanks. Android 5 is really ancient stuff. There's a possibility to install Android 6 with root, but I don't think that'll save the situation much. What's interesting though, why you might want to buy it, several pretty significant games were specially ported to Tegra back in the day, particularly Half-Life 2 with episodes, which really plays great on this kind of device, especially considering its age. I remember Half-Life on it literally blew my mind back then. Portal was there too. Especially relevant now with Portal RTX coming out, you can remember how it played normally here. A 2007 game running on basically a 2013 smartphone. There was also Borderlands 2 and pre-sequel, but I couldn't launch them now because they required network connection and jumping through hoops. Then on cracked versions there were no weapons. Basically couldn't launch them. For the next generation, I remember Tomb Raider from 2012 came out, and it was pretty cool, yeah I agree, but the point was already lost because practically all these games can now be run on any Android smartphone, even full PC versions through emulators. Is it cool that you can play Half-Life or Portal here? Yes. But is it worth replaying on such a device? I don't know. With certain desire, it'll be cool, but emulators here feel pretty decent, though not all of them, and getting such a gadget for them would actually be nice. Of course, the hardware won't let you emulate something like GameCube with Most Wanted or Carbon, but old PlayStation or PSP with Dendy, you just launch and you're flying. Again, PPS SPP and all other emulators feel pretty decent, and NES through RetroArch works really well. It's convenient that there's a memory card. You just dump all your games there into your classic games library, and that's it, it's always with you. You take it somewhere, open it up, and launch your favorite DuckTales. But the most important thing that's really cool to use on this device, and what it was basically designed for initially, is game streaming, as I said at the beginning and only remembered this device because of my last video about Stadia's failure. Here you have NVIDIA Hub itself, which after updating allows you to use GeForce Now without crutches. One of the best modern streaming services that actually works. And by the way, it works well thanks to the small resolution. You turn on Cyberpunk on max settings with some ray tracing, and you realize that the picture is sharp on such a screen at 720p size, reflections are beautiful, and latency is small because it still catches 5 GHz Wi-Fi, but you need your router to give it a channel below 50th, 49th, 48th, and it immediately sees the network. Had to Google to understand. For such a cloud scenario, the device is still relevant because hardware doesn't really matter for this. There's enough here, and ergonomically, this is a top device. That's why while I was sick with cloud gaming, I really got into it. Spent a week barely coming out. Then I decided to connect it to the TV. Also a cool thing. Yeah, you can use it as a controller or connect a third-party controller. By the way, I have one like this. Also from NVIDIA, look how beautiful it looks. Such futuristic polygons and surprisingly comfortable. Got it with the first generation Shield TV, I think, which is an Android TV box. Again, if GeForce Now isn't your thing, stream from any other services. There are way too many of them now, I think, or stream from your PC. Download something like Steam Link and you're flying. Shield offers you to use their own game stream for this, but honestly, screw it. Even if you manage to set it up, it's total crutches, but Steam's Steam Link just downloaded, launched, and everything flew. But again, you need 5 GHz Wi-Fi and PC hardware to run all the necessary games that you can play remotely while lying on the couch, for example. So this device is still good specifically for streaming because on all smartphones I buy special controller mounts so it sticks out like this. But here, everything's already in the package. You just bought it and forgot about it. It's not that expensive on the secondary market now, but it's ergonomic, comfortable, cool, with full-fledged sticks and all that. Launch GeForce Now, Steam Link if needed, PS Remote Play, some streaming or Xbox xCloud, and you're off. Not bad, but again, for those who understand, appreciate, and love cloud gaming, there aren't many of those. But in Fortnite, by the way, I spent quite a bit of time here via streaming, getting frags, hitting top 5 normally. Easy stuff. But keep in mind that everyone will have their own results because streaming depends not only on internet quality, but also how far you are from the servers running the game. Of course, ergonomically, this still isn't the coolest device in the universe, so during long gaming sessions, some moments start to genuinely annoy, but these are all features of the form factor with a folding display that turned out compact and completely covers all controls. It's harder to do it differently. That part of games available on Android is relatively useless here. Well, honestly, I don't play anything that's supported by such old Android, unfortunately or fortunately. Though you can play FIFA, let's say. But who plays FIFA on a smartphone? Replay San Andreas or Half-Life with episodes? Well, yeah, probably possible, but I'd rather replay some remasters on PC with ray tracing, even if it's a mod. Plus dealing with these APKs with caches, because here literally 1 out of 10 games launches, let alone versions. You'll get tired, honestly. So this isn't a story about Android, it's more about streaming, making the device very niche. Who's it for now? For nostalgic geeks who love interesting gadgets and don't mind streaming, and sometimes play some Android games or light emulators. For them, it'll be interesting at minimum, a dedicated gaming Android device that you're not ashamed to throw in a backpack and play on the road, or in bed with Wi-Fi on streaming services. Heck, you can even watch some series, put it on the table, plug in headphones, or even via Bluetooth, and enjoy. Active cooling sometimes makes itself known, and the device itself isn't super light, gets a bit warm too. This is also noticeable if you launch something heavy, but I wouldn't say all these nuances are very critical. At the time of its release, it was really a very interesting and enticing device, such a breath of fresh air in the gaming device market. But now, even from a nostalgia perspective, it's more of a collection device, or you really have to be a fan of cloud technologies. Those are my thoughts, honestly. Spent a week with it because I was sick, it was in bed, I spent a lot of time with it, and actually, yeah, it's a cool device if, again, you're a cloud gaming fan like me, for example. But this doesn't suit everyone, so it's really a niche collectible device. But it was nice to spend time with it. What do you think? Write in the comments. It'll be interesting to read. Maybe you owned one back in the day or used something similar. Describe your experience. If the video was useful or you didn't know about such a device at all, hit like, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss new videos, and have a great day, great mood, and we'll hear from each other soon.